You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Friday 16th of January 2015. Operation Sanctuary, Newcastle, Benwell area man charged with 21 sex offences, some involving girls as young as 11. Top publisher bans mention of pork or pigs in school books so as not to offend Muslims or Jews. 7 men sexually exploited teenage girls in Banbury. Revealed disproportionately high numbers of Pakistani men behind on-street grooming, while white men worst for online cases. West Yorkshire Police Force ordered to improve child protection practices. British Muslim community leader, new Charlie Hebdo cartoon of Muhammad is grossly racist. Germany bracing for Islamic terror. Why no international outcry over Boko Haram killings in Nigeria? Thought for the day, lies and more lies. And finally, 2 for 1 Day Friday. UK news. Operation Sanctuary, Newcastle, Benwell area man charged with 21 sex offences, some involving girls as young as 11. Bamani Hamadi of Benwell, Newcastle faces charges including transporting girls around the UK for sexual exploitation in North Tyneside Magistrates Court. Ahmadi has been charged with 21 sex offences, some involving girls as young as 11 and 12. The charges date from May 2012 to July 2014. Ahmadi of Hampstead Road, Benwell, Newcastle entered no pleas to any of the 21 charges. Northumbria Police confirmed to the North East Chronicle that they brought the charges against Ahmadi as part of Operation Sanctuary, an investigation into allegations of a series of sexual offences. World Date never fails, does it? Yet this is another case which will be hidden from public eyes so as not to offend the Muslim communities. Top publisher bans mention of pork or pigs in school books so as not to offend Muslims or Jews. Authors are being warned not to mention pigs or sausages in children's school books in an apparent bid to avoid offending Muslims and Jews. Top academic publisher, the Oxford University Press, has issued guidance that authors should avoid using pork-related words. The move was revealed during a BBC discussion on free speech in the wake of the Paris terror attacks on satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo. Today, programme presenter Jim Naughty, who is married to writer Alina Updale, said, "I've got a letter here which was sent out by Oxford University Press to an author doing something for young people. Among the things prohibited in the text that was commissioned by OUP was the following: pigs, plus anything else which could be perceived as pork." World Date. Oh dear, so they've got our police force banged to rights. What crap, we've had Jews in this country for years and never had to resort to this sort of rubbish until the coming of Islam. We really should all grow up. 7 men sexually exploited teenage girls in Banbury. 7 young men groomed and sexually exploited 8 teenage girls in Banbury, a jury in Oxford Crown Court has been told. On the first day of their trial, prosecution barristers Stuart Trimmer QC said the defendants identified their targets by organising parties for under 18s. He said the group was known as BB or B2 and they subjected their victims to a cycle of abuse, which in some cases culminating rape and even gang rape. The defendants are Ahmed Hassan Soule, 21, of Glyndebourne Gardens, Syed Sella, 20, of Orchard Way, Mohammed Sella, 21, of Orchard Way, Takudzwa Hova, 21, of Broughton Road, Kadiso Manasi, 26, of Warwick Road, and Alexandra Ney, 19, of Broome Way. They were charged alongside a 17-year-old, he cannot be named, for legal reasons. The defendants deny a total of 26 charges, including 19 counts of sexual activity with a child, 2 counts of causing or inciting a child to engage in sexual activity, 3 counts of rape and 2 counts of sexual assault. All the offences are alleged to have taken place between 2011 and 2013. Opening the case today, Mr Trimmer said, "This case concerns the sexual exploitation of a number of vulnerable girls aged between 13 and 16 by a group of males predominantly aged between 18 and 25 years old." World at 8. Yup, they start 'em young in these Muslim communities. If we'd punished these perps years ago, we would not have this problem now. Revealed disproportionately high numbers of Pakistani men behind on-street grooming, while white men worst for online cases. British-born Pakistani men and Pakistani migrants are behind a disproportionately high number of on-street child sex exploitation cases in Birmingham and the West Midlands, an official investigation has found. And white middle-aged men have been identified as being involved in the majority of online grooming, with an increasing number of teenage boys targeting girls. West Midland Police and the region's 7 local authorities jointly commissioned the 2 in-depth problem profiles for on-street and online child sexual exploitation (CSE) last year, but the findings have yet to be made public. But the Birmingham Mail can reveal the on-street profile discovered a disproportionately high number of suspected offenders were of Pakistani Muslim origin, both British-born and migrants. The ethnicity link mirrors that of the other cities hit by CSE scandals, including Rotherham and Rochdale. Yet it is unclear if the full findings will be made public, as it is understood the figures for on-street and online grooming will be combined to paint a total picture for the region's CSE problem. Senior police officers and council chief executives are currently deciding how much of their findings should be put into the public domain. When their provisional on-street and online grooming data are combined, 39% of offenders are white and 26% Asian. But those statistics do not distinguish between all grooming and on-street grooming, where vulnerable youngsters are befriended and abused, often after being plied with alcohol or drugs. In October, the Birmingham Mail told how an internal West Midlands police problem profile from 2012 had shown 75% of known on-street groomers in the West Midlands were Asian, with 82% of victims aged 14 to 16 being white. A report to Sandwell's Safeguarding Children Board in 2013 had revealed intelligence suggests that of potential suspects identified, 75% of those known are of Asian ethnicity. This has mirrored other forces' experiences of known offenders and, as we have seen from the Derbyshire, Lancashire and Rochdale cases, has the potential to impact on trust and confidence within local communities across the West Midlands. The report added that 82% of victims were white girls aged between 14 and 16, with 80% having been reported as missing more than once and 38% having been in care. Yet Birmingham City Council has played down the ethnicity link when it published its own report into CSE in November, called We Need to Get It Right. It stated the high-profile cases have largely drawn explicit attention to the girls being white and the perpetrators Asian. Our evidence has shouted out that the exploitation can happen to anybody, irrespective of where you live or your family's circumstances. World at 8. Well, of course the authorities are going to lump all these figures together as it hides the Muslim criminals and lights up the white perverts. West Yorkshire Police Force ordered to improve child protection practices. A police force has been told it needs to improve child protection practices after a report found it had not resolved problems highlighted in earlier reviews. Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary, HMIC, found that West Yorkshire Police had inconsistencies across the force area, particularly in its own approach towards child sexual exploitation (CSE) cases. But the force was praised for its commitment to improving child protection services to provide the best outcomes for children. The inspection, carried out in August, is part of a rolling programme of child protection inspections of all police forces in England and Wales. Inspectors in West Yorkshire were concerned to find weak responses and delays in investigations in difficult, complex or prolonged cases, poor recording on police systems, children being unnecessarily detained in police custody overnight, and a lack of a force-wide understanding of the demand generated by child protection issues. The report found the standard of CSE investigations was mixed. Out of 15 CSE cases examined, inspectors found 9 to be inadequate, including a case involving a 15-year-old girl who told her teacher she'd been coerced into sending indecent photographs of herself to older men and felt pressurised to meet them in a hotel. British Muslim community leader: new Charlie Hebdo cartoon of Muhammad is grossly racist. A Muslim community leader in Bristol has criticised the republication of Charlie Hebdo cartoons of Muhammad in the UK this week, calling them grossly racist. Some newspapers and websites in the UK have published images from this week's edition of the French satirical magazine. The latest cover was published in advance by French media. Outside France, the Washington Post, Germany's Frankfurter Allgemeine and Corriere della Sera in Italy also showed the cartoon in a display of solidarity. But Abdul Malik, chair of Eastern Jamia Masjid, said the images are racist, derogatory and hate-filled. World at 8 got a point, but the grossness was across the board and included porn of Jesus and God. It isn't only Muslims who are sensitive, you know. Christians have had to ignore all the leftist crap for many years with no consideration at all. Get over it. European news. Germany bracing for Islamic terror. German police have evidence the key European cities could be attacked at any time, Der Spiegel. On Friday, Berlin police said they'd taken 2 men into custody on suspicion that they were recruiting fighters and procuring equipment and funding for the Islamic State group, better known as ISIS, in Syria. The 2 were picked up in a series of raids involving the search of 11 residences by 250 police officers. Authorities said the raids were part of a month-long investigation into a small group of extremists based in Berlin. However, they also said there was no evidence the group was planning attacks inside Germany. The group's leader, identified only as 41-year-old Ismet D, in accordance with privacy laws, is accused of organising the group of largely Turkish and Russian nationals to fight against infidels in Syria. Emin F, 43, is accused of being in charge of finances. Those recruited include Murat S, a 40-year-old Turkish man who was arrested in September after returning from Syria where he had allegedly gone to fight. In an unrelated raid, German police arrested 26-year-old German-Tunisian dual national into custody Thursday on suspicion he'd gone to fight with a terrorist group in Syria. Police made the arrest in Wolfsburg, 125 miles outside Berlin. World at 8. About time Merkel and co came down from the Holy Mount with different tablets. They'll have to face what the EU have done to Europe, starting on their own home territory. World news. Why no international outcry over Boko Haram killings in Nigeria? France, Syria, Somalia, Nigeria, all countries where people have been killed by extremists. But do we view all victims equally or see every attack as equally significant? Just a few weeks before the latest attacks by Islamic terror group Boko Haram, German politician Frank Heinrich, a member of Chancellor Merkel's Christian Democrat Party, travelled through Nigeria. He spoke with Christians and Muslims and met with politicians, as well as with relatives of the kidnapped Chibok girls. His visit left a lasting impression, Heinrich said in an interview with DW, adding that he was shocked to see how people in Germany are generally aware of terror in Iraq but are poorly informed about the situation in Nigeria. Heinrich is a member of the German Parliament's Committee on Human Rights and Humanitarian Aid. On his trip to Nigeria, he saw villages deserted after Boko Haram attacks, and although last week's massacre in the town of Baga is said to have been the worst in months, such atrocities are barely mentioned by German news outlets. One reason why Baga attracted so little interest is that it came so soon after the murders in Paris, Heinrich said. He finds it regrettable that Germany shows so little interest in Africa. The attack on satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo in Paris prompted numerous expressions of solidarity throughout the world. Protest marches brought millions of people onto the streets. Public life in many cities came to a standstill for a minute of silence. Less than 2 days after the Paris murders, as many as 2,000 people are believed to have been killed in an attack by Boko Haram in Nigeria, but there were no international reactions of shock and horror. World at 8. There could be 2 reasons for this indifference. 1. Many of the Muslim terrorists are black, and most people couldn't give a rat's arse about what happens in Africa as they seem unable to help themselves at all, and the West is too busy with oil to bother about that country, or too blind to help Christians anywhere. The Church of Rome is even more indifferent to their plight. We should all be ashamed. Thought for the day. Lies and more lies. Despite the outcry in France over the Hebdo and kosher market killings, people are still holding back in actually calling a spade, or in this case a Muslim terrorist, a Muslim terrorist. The French have actually stuck together though, which in this country would never happen. We would still be doing a lot of public grieving, masses of flowers and tearful pudgy faces that never even knew the victims, and the reporters would be asking the same silly questions they always do. And how did this make you feel? But we would never even mention the word Muslim in the same sentence as terrorist and murder. And as an aside, why is it that we all call Charlie Hebdo Jali Hebdo? We are English, and when we do, as a nation, try to speak another language, we're always told you speak with an English accent. Well, that is because, you dimwits, we speak English all the time and not your language, and the French are especially rude in this respect. Have you ever heard a Frenchman speak English? It's like molasses crawling over stones. No sign of an English accent there at all. The Spanish are even worse. I had a Spanish boyfriend once and simply chucked him because I couldn't really get the hang of what he was talking about. So here to all the French is my English pronunciation of their Charlie Hebdo, Charlie Hebdo. Now, whilst on that subject, the Pope came out with a very good sentiment, and bear in mind I, least of all people, have any time for Islam at all, and that was, it was simply rude to be profane about any religion. And he's right. Hebdo is a socialist rag and hates all religions, as all good commies do. So Islam really was in the pot, so to speak. But of course now, with the killings, Hebdo will cash in and print anything about Islam it can lay its hands on. Very different to the US and UK, of course, where the magazine would have been banned because of the Human Rights Brigade, who always think that foreigners have more human rights than any indigenous peoples of that country. I was sent a very good one from one of our reporters today, showing a true happening which should have gone out on the front page of Hebdo for its almost laughable content. I read. There's dumb, there's dumber, and then there's this guy. A real incident in Pakistan. A Taliban suicide bomber stopped and was searched by the police, was found with a metal shield around his penis. Asked about the purpose of this protection, his response was, "I want to keep my penis intact after the explosion so as not to have sexual problems when I get my 72 virgins in heaven." Just wondering, is this the true interpretation of a dickhead? Now that is humour, as opposed to sheer viciousness. But we also have to take into account you only have to sneeze and somewhere some Muslim will be mortally offended again and again. It doesn't take very much doing. That is why I was expecting no difference in the Channel 4 Angry White and Proud programme. It was because I was expecting what I was that when I got even more of what I was expecting, it even surprised me. I think this programme was made by the same bastards who filmed me and two other ladies in BMP Wives. The same cutting, the same words taken completely out of context, and the same message: patriotism is a fool's game and all patriots are knuckle-draggers or village idiots. One may be mistaken for thinking you're living in a socialist society, as the left is, or the far left, are never treated in the same dehumanising manner, despite all the trouble they cause and how generally awful they look and sound. And of course the same applies to the Muslim population who stick their asses in the air in public places in the UK and treat us from time to time with lovely banners that range from "Kill the Unbelievers" to "Britain will be Sharia", along with the burqa'd women and heavily bearded, permanently angry men. We had shots of these types on occasion as a bit of a breather from the well-meaning but clearly fragmented patriots, and even in this programme no sight or sound or whatever was seen or heard of the British National Party, which is odd, because although listening to Starboard nowadays, early last year was still reasonably all there. The reporter was not lost for words, having used fragmented at least 50 times, and splinter groups even more so, and showed the plods up for the poor excuse for the police force they are. I think they must, before any demonstration of nationalism, get together in the police food hall and draw straws for whomever wants a bit of action on a slow day, as they clearly didn't want to be there with the well-reported knuckle-draggers or hairy migrant Muslims. As it turned out, I was sure the hero of the hour was a plant who had been paid to infiltrate and then, of course, as they all do, in well-publicised bearing of souls, have epiphanies on the road to Rotherham, that well-known mecca of Muslim underage grooming of white girls, and feel that he's too nice to indulge in a bit of would-be violence, as he's not a damaged person like the guys who befriended him. The reporter harped on about the patriots' violence, but scammed over Muslim violence completely, as indeed do the plods. To me, a guy who rapes and pimps out very young girls is worse than a patriot who sticks some bacon on a mosque door, and deserves arresting and sentencing to within an inch of his life. We had the usual smarmy Muslim all dressed up, and I've heard this jerk before at the crop conference, ululating that yes, some of the vulnerable girls had been abused by Pakistani Muslims, but none of their families or community members knew about it. Hogwash and whitewash, but it seems to work for Hussein, who is the head of the Muslim Council of the UK, I think. Why do we have to have a Muslim council or anything to do with them? I really don't know. Of course, this point about the huge number of Muslims breeding and still coming into the country passed our reporter by completely, but the fact is that that if we did not have this immense number of them over here, all the marches, all the protests and all of the many and nefarious problems we have now with Islam would simply not happen. So this idiot reporter would be out of a job, so he is making hay while the sun shines. It didn't touch on the real problems at all, but the Greek Cypriot was very good and right. The troubles in Cyprus didn't start until the Muslims got antsy, and he's seen the same thing starting again in his adopted country of Britain, in the east of London, which is now truly the East. No wonder, after viewing what parts of London have become the programme, moved to Rotherham, where, in the words of the reporter, a few cases of vulnerable girls being abused, etc, etc, and he couldn't even get that right. Everyone with half a brain knows this grooming has been going on nearly 40 years, since the Labour government let in millions of Asians and ghettoised them up north. The police and councils have ignored it, hoping it would go away, as we hope the Muslims will eventually. But of course it hasn't, and they probably won't. What right the police have in remonstrating with peaceful patriots whilst the filthy anti-fascist lot yell like fishwives after a night on the border beats me. Although of course we all know they have been told if they, the plods, value their jobs or their pensions, they tackle the patriots and leave the lefties and Muslims in peace. I found the whole thing sad and a very bad indictment of us Brits as a whole. Take any country in the world outside of Europe and you won't find British communities stirring up hatred in those countries that the Muslims stir up in their host countries in Europe. Take a Muslim, put him in a white Christian country, watch him breed and then watch him take over. They did it in Arabia and throughout the Middle East, parts of the Far East, Africa, India and Europe. Islam is the word for submission and conversion. They take all colours, but not any other religion is permissible for a Muslim, converted or not, to mix with. Unlike the Judaic faith, in which you have to be born of a Jewish woman, Islam, with all its wives, slavery and harems, cannot put the onus on one woman, so it is a faith of conversion or die. It is not a religion of peace, but it is a religion of walking on the other side, ignoring the screams of a guy about to be beheaded, because it must be the will of Allah. I don't want Islam in the UK. In fact, I do not want Islam anywhere, and if we had decent governments with balls, patriots and nationalists, however fragmented, would not have to worry about the future of people who clearly are the subject of misinformation on a grand scale. Look to the root of the problems, not the outcomes or the branches. And finally, 2 for 1 Day Friday. Irish blonde. An attractive blonde from Cork arrives at the casino. She seems a little intoxicated and bet $20,000 in a single roll of the dice. She said, "I hope you don't mind, but I feel much luckier when I'm completely nude." With that, she stripped from the neck down, rolled the dice and in her Irish brogue yelled, "Come on baby, mama needs new clothes." As the dice came to a stop, she jumped up and down and squealed, "Yes, yes, I won, I won." She hugged each of the dealers, picked up her winnings and her clothes and quickly departed. The dealers stared at each other, dumbfounded. Finally one of them asked, "What did she roll?" The other answered, "I don't know. I thought you were watching." Moral of the story: not all Irish are drunks, not all blondes are dumb, but all men are men. And what a coincidence. A chicken farmer went to the local bar. He sat next to a woman and ordered champagne. The woman said, "How strange. I also just ordered a glass of champagne." "What a coincidence," said the farmer, who added, "It's a special day for me. I'm celebrating." "It's a special day for me too. I am also celebrating," said the woman. "What a coincidence," said the farmer. While they toasted, the man asked, "What are you celebrating?" "My husband and I have been trying to have a child for years, and today my gynaecologist told me I was pregnant." "What a coincidence," said the man. "I'm a chicken farmer, and for years all my hens were infertile, but now they are all set to lay fertilised eggs." "This is awesome," said the woman. "What did you do for your chickens to become fertile?" "I used a different rooster," he said. The woman smiled and said, "What a coincidence." You've been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozart, and I and the team at World at 8 and Radio Britain wish you all a very happy and a very safe weekend. It's confirmed in the North East Chronicle that they've brought the charges against Ahmadi as part of Operation Sanctuary, an investigation into allegations of a series of sexual offences. World at 8 never fails, does it? Yet this is another case which will be hidden from public eyes so as not to offend the Muslim communities. Top publisher bans mention of pork or pigs in school books so as not to offend Muslims or Jews. Authors are being warned not to mention pigs or sausages in children's school books in an apparent bid to avoid offending Muslims and Jews. Top academic publisher, the Oxford University Press, has issued guidance.
You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Friday 16th of January 2015. Operation Sanctuary, Newcastle, Benwell area man charged with 21 sex offences, some involving girls as young as 11. Top publisher bans mention. UK news. Operation Sanctuary, Newcastle, Benwell area man charged with 21 sex offences, some involving girls as young as 11. Bamani Hamadi of Benwell, Newcastle faces charges including transporting girls around the UK for sexual exploitation in North Tyneside Magistrates Court. Ahmadi has been charged with 21 sex offences, some involving girls as young as 11 and 12. The charges date from May 2012 to July 2014. Ahmadi of Hampstead Road, Benwell, Newcastle entered no pleas to any of the 21 charges. Northumbria Police said authors should avoid using pork-related words. The move was revealed during a BBC discussion on free speech in the wake of the Paris terror attacks on satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo. Today, programme presenter Jim Naughty, who is married to writer Alina Updale, said, "I've got a letter here which was sent out by Oxford University Press to an author doing something for young people. Among the things prohibited in the text that was commissioned by OUP was the following: pigs, plus anything else which could be perceived as pork." World at 8. Oh dear, so they've got our police force banged to rights. Mention of pork or pigs in school books so as not to offend Muslims or Jews. 7 men sexually exploited teenage girls in Banbury. Revealed disproportionately high numbers of Pakistani men behind on-street grooming, while white men worst for online cases. West Yorkshire Police Force ordered to improve child protection practices. British Muslim community leader, new Charlie Hebdo cartoon of Muhammad is grossly racist. Germany bracing for Islamic terror. Why no international outcry over Boko Haram killings in Nigeria? Thought for the day, lies and more lies. And finally, 2 for 1 Day Friday.